I'm just going to let everyone know that we will be recording this. So we're going to start the recording now. If our panelists, if you would like to, you can start your video and unmute yourself, and we will get started. So welcome. We're very excited. We have a lot of people on the line here. It looks like from all over the country. So my name is Melissa Corto. I'm the CEO of Education Modified and was a special ed teacher in New York City public schools for 9 years. I was in the classroom. And we're going to discuss today 4 specific topics that charter leaders can do to bridge the gaps in special education. So I would like to start with introductions from our amazing panelists here. We have quite a range of extensive domain expertise in special education. So I'd like to start with Wanda and go down the line. If you could just give just a 1 to 2 minute about yourself and your background and why you're on this panel today. Wanda, can you hear us? Maybe we could start with Anna while we're waiting for Wanda.
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Thanks everyone. Glad to be here. I spent 10 years working with Uncommon Schools. I ran 13 schools in 3 cities. And so while not a special education practitioner, saw firsthand the challenges and the importance of really great systems. And so when I was introduced to Education Modified, a lot of it really resonated with me in terms of giving tools and resources in the place that is closest to students, which is the teachers and the special education practitioners at the school, because where I, consistently saw things fall down was not about people's intentions or anything like that, but was a lack of tools and systems and the necessity of those things to be created and sustained and generated by folks who had the lion's share of work to do. So that's my background. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Anna. Wanda, are you with us? Do you want to go?
I am. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Hi, my name is Wanda Gregory. I am the Director of Special Populations for Capital City Public Charter School in Washington, D.C. Let's see, what has brought me to this work? I have been with Capital City for 15 years now, and I've worked with a range of people to develop an inclusive program, one that's pretty comparable with the college prep program that we have just within our network. So one of the reasons we were so excited to discover Education Modified, we really grappled with trying to figure out how to have special educators, EL specialists, and general educators meeting on common ground and understanding the needs of the learners that were in front of them. So that's how we came to be so excited to partner with Education Modified.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Lily, are you here? Would you like to go next?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to be able to speak to all of you. My name is Liliana Salazar. I'm the National Director for Special Ed and Student Support for one of the nation's largest educational service providers of charter schools, called Academica. We service about 180 schools nationally. In my previous life, before I came to the dark side, as many people will say when you leave and you go to charter schools for some reason or another, I was the director for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, the 4th largest school system in the nation, and just was responsible for a small amount of 37,000 special ed kids. So I really love special ed. It's always been my passion. I became familiar with Ed Modified when Melissa was just starting the company. So I immediately fell in love with the concept, and I was very pleased that it is a tool that not only special educators can use, but also our general, our regular educators, and most importantly, phenomenal resources for our parents. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here.
Yes, thank you. And finally, Meagan, are you here? Can you share with us?
I am here. So hi, everybody. My name is Meagan Alderton. I'm the Program Quality Specialist for the DC Special Education Cooperative. So I'll start a little bit with about how I came to this work, and then I'll share a little bit about what the co-op does. I came to this work first I started out teaching severely emotionally disabled kids in Baltimore. In a non-public school setting. And then from there, I shifted to teaching in the Alexandria City Public Schools. I have been a student support director in the charter sector at Washington Latin. And I came to the co-op about 8 years ago. We provide a lot of technical assistance to our members. If you know anything about the system in DC, we have a lot of charter schools, and about 50 of the, I believe 67 are members of our organization. So we provide technical support, we provide a lot of professional development and training, and just do our best to try to help our schools provide quality special education services to kids with disabilities. And another little fun fact about me, I am on the school board in the city of Alexandria. So it's been really nice to sort of be able to now see all the connections we need to make, you know, from the 5,000-foot view all the way down to the classroom. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for joining us. So quickly, as I mentioned, I taught special ed in New York City Public Schools in Brooklyn, New York. For 9 years, I was in the classroom. I led our school's inclusion model. I was the first co-teacher in our building and built out our co-teaching program. By the time I left, we had 14 co-teaching teams in the building. And I also mentored new special ed teachers coming into the profession through the Urban Teacher Residency Program. And I'm also here because I wanted to show and share what we have built at Education Modified. You know, I don't want to kind of bury the needle here in saying that, you know, what we think there is a huge opportunity to support charter leaders in bridging gaps in special education. We created Education Modified to do just that. I know that many of you get nothing but emails about products, but we truly believe that this is, you know, unlike some new widgets or things that you're seeing, that this is a program that is really good for kids and for teachers and for schools. And lastly, I'm here to provide you with some other information that I hope you will find valuable and useful. And we will also be providing some free resources for all of our attendees that you can, you know, use as a charter school leader and begin to kind of take back into your schools right away. So with no further ado, we will get started. So what we're hoping everyone will learn today is, you know, what Special Ed Teachers Report is necessary for the needs of all special populations of students. Secondly, how collaboration truly impacts outcomes from two lenses, both through co-teaching as well as interoperability. I'm excited to kind of explain what we mean by that. And then what parents want to understand from charter schools about their child's individual needs, and then how Education Modified is working to bridge all those gaps. So with our panelists, if you could, given each of your experiences, you know, what do you see as the biggest challenge currently in special education in your schools or in your networks? I'll just throw that out there to anyone.
All right, well, this is Lily, and I'll take that one real quick. I think the biggest challenge that I see, and I see nationally, is that charters struggle with ensuring that we have more students with special needs or special ed students in our schools. Sometimes, and you'll read a lot about this, we do have like this negative stigma that we are not accepting children with special needs or children with disabilities, which is absolutely the opposite. We are. But I do think that some of our charters struggle. They might even be afraid of the fact that they might not be able to service the child accordingly. And I think that if we are able to provide more knowledge and support to our charter schools, that they would be more understanding and open and not so afraid to take in more special ed kids. That's the biggest challenge I see.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is Meagan. I think maybe the biggest, another challenge that I see overall is to really create that understanding that special education is not a special ed issue. It's that sort of ownership across general and special education to understand that we are all here to serve kids. And so the biggest challenge I think that I've seen is how do we bridge that gap and make that connection? Because I'm concerned that if special ed is always just a special education issue, then we won't reach that sort of nirvana that we're looking for. We won't reach that true inclusive practice if all people aren't understanding that they need to take ownership over kids with disabilities.
This is Wanda. I heard Liliana in DC. I think that's not the challenge at all in terms of having special ed students in our population. So we historically have had 20% of our general population include students with disabilities. And over the past 3 years or so, that percentage has been increasing just a little. So I think right now we're sitting at about 21 or 22%. And we have a few more days before enrollment ends. But I agree with both Liliana and with Meagan. I think one of the biggest challenges that's facing us is getting the entire organization to have some collective responsibility around meeting the needs of exceptional learners. I think not just, general education teachers and special education teachers, but actually principals, assistant principals, directors of student services, special education coordinators. The entire staff needs to be on board with identifying and figuring out how every student learns in the building. That's the biggest challenge for me.
This is Anna. I agree with all of that, and I think the thing that I would just add is that in my experience, the communities that charter schools are serving, in particular in the states where I've worked, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York, the students, it's rare that a student sort of has one discrete, unique special need. It's lots of things, both in terms of their learning, but also in terms of their community, in terms of some of the stress and challenges that they and their family might be dealing with. And I think sort of being attentive to the intersection of all of those things and having, as I totally agree, the entire school community, but also people not being afraid to dive in and you sort of meet those challenges as a school community, as opposed to sometimes just feeling like it's sort of all too much.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, absolutely. I think that there is, both to what Lily and Anna just said, that it's a lot. And I think one of the answers could be, this collective responsibility. One of the things that I wanted to share is that my team has done work on this for the past 6 years, in which we talk to special ed directors and teachers, and both general ed and special ed teachers, kind of all day, every day. And we came up with this special ed barrier that really, there are multiple problems that have been broken down into a few categories that are often highlighted. There aren't enough resources, that special ed is not teacher friendly, that there's a lot of stakeholders, there's not enough training, there's disorganization. And so it's a lot. And, while populations are increasing, students have multiple challenges. There's also, lots of technical challenges in the implementation as well. And so hopefully we can try to analyze some of those a little bit further and go into, some specific nuances of that. In terms of, for our panelists, given your experience, specifically special ed teachers on the ground in the classroom, what do you believe they need? And beyond maybe this kind of higher level collective responsibility, what do you believe special ed teachers need to execute on special ed programming to reach their students, to support what our classrooms look like today?
This is Anna. I would say really sort of concrete, bite-sized ideas that they could try today. I think so often professional development is at the 50,000 foot level, and not that that is bad, but when you feel like you've really hit a wall with an individual student, or you're just sort of out of ideas, I think the idea of a thing that you could try today is often sort of, not only is it a thing that you can try, but it gives you a sense of optimism and of opportunity, as opposed to just feeling like you're sort of out of ideas.
Yeah, I would definitely add on to that. I think Anna's really hit the nail on the head there in terms of professional development. When I noticed that teachers like to take things that they can use right away. And so that's really important, that we're not just, I think also doing sort of these one-off professional developments are not effective because people can have a lot of joy and a lot of excitement after the one session, but what's the follow-up? So I think, follow-up coaching, real peer coaching where someone can have someone who's coming in to help them and show them to implement different ideas on a regular basis would go a really long way.
This is Lily, and I think that piggybacking on what my colleagues are saying, it's funny because Melissa, you hit the nail on the head, because all of us are sort of saying the same thing, and it means that we're all on the same page and we all feel as passionate as we do about special ed. But I think that our special ed teachers need time to plan, because obviously what the research and what the evidence indicates is that what works with students with special needs is that they're getting that explicit and systematic instruction, right? And what happens is that many times a special ed teacher is carrying so much weight, is wearing so many hats, and they're not given just an ounce of planning time so they can meet all of these individual needs of students. So I would love, along with the professional development is so important, the coaching, the modeling, but they need the time as well. So that's what I would add for any administrators that are listening. Please give your special ed teachers some time to plan and really absorb that professional development.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I will add that I haven't heard yet, because I wholeheartedly agree with everything that's been said so far, I think the idea of concrete strategies that can be implemented seamlessly within the program that special educators are currently working in. So I know we have struggled with kind of accessing these amazing types of strategies, and then they don't really fit very well within our program. So I do think that's one difference that Education Modified has offered us.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that you have all definitely hit the nail on the head with what is concurrent with the state of special education with the latest report from the Council for Exceptional Children. So the CEC did an extremely comprehensive report that they released last year, which they researched with over 1,500 special educators across the country to provide a current snapshot of the state of special ed. And this is what special ed teachers said that they needed. So first and foremost thing was adequate resources. So that means assistive technology, materials. So I think that that goes along the lines with this idea of concrete strategies, practical support, bite-sized ideas, information that they can use right away. The second thing that teachers, special ed teachers, said that they needed was smaller class sizes and caseloads, which we know is a much bigger problem, and probably a whole nother webinar that we could do on that. And then the third thing, which Wanda alluded to, was administrators who support the IEP process. So, really having principals, assistant principals, understand and be able to support that process. So going along with what Lily said around, designing your programming that includes adequate collaborative planning time and the ability to, implement the professional development that was delivered. The other thing that I wanted to point out about this report that I thought was extremely relevant was that special ed teachers from all over generally did not feel that other classroom stakeholders were well prepared. I would like, do any of the panelists have any thoughts about this? So if you look at the chart, they rated their colleagues compared to themselves in being prepared to work with students with special needs. And I think that this kind of alludes to that idea of collective responsibility, that special ed teachers don't maybe feel that their colleagues not only don't feel responsible, but aren't prepared. Does anyone have any comments on that? Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Looking at this chart, the number one thing I would think of is this general educators. I don't think, and I'm not sure if, some of it is like our teacher institutions aren't preparing people enough around this issue because there isn't an idea of collective ownership that has, guided this work. But yeah, absolutely, because our students with disabilities aren't just, in classrooms with special educators.
Right.
So, and even if you think about the law saying that our students need to have access to the general education curriculum, then that really means that general educators should be prepared to serve these kids. And it's just not happening.
And I'd like to take it a step further, because I agree with you that our undergraduate institutions, I don't feel are preparing our general ed track teachers enough when it comes to understanding and being able to teach children with special needs. But I also think, being a former principal, that the ed leadership programs are not either. Yeah. And what we do know is that if, as a principal, one of her priorities or visions or missions is ensuring that special needs children are having their needs met, and that, all of that support is getting through not just to only the special ed teacher, but again, going to this, idea that it is a collective process. Everyone should be involved. Mm-hmm. I think that we really also need to, understand that we need to make sure that our principals are prioritizing this and providing all of the support as well, not just for the special ed, but the general ed teachers as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and any of the other panelists want to speak on this? I mean, I just thought that this was exceptionally, relevant, coming from the horse's mouth, if you will, and then also what we were mentioning about that collective responsibility. Any other thoughts or comments?
This is Wanda. I think, just in addition to what's already been said, I think as an administrator, one of the things that I struggled with when I first started in this career is identifying where teachers had areas that needed growth, and determining what was appropriate, again, for the program. And I think I see that paraeducators are, probably the part that we struggle with the most, and I don't think that's getting any better. I think for paraeducators, we there's such a wide range of individualized needs that we are attempting to get paras to address that we often leave them floundering, unfortunately. So I do think that's an area that we all need growth in.
Okay,
I mean,
great. Oh, go
the only other thing that I would just name is like, and in particular along this para thing is just how desperately, you know, as a culture, we need to reboot our expectations for many different kinds of kids, but in particular for these kids. Because when I think about, you know, paras, for example, you know, this chart doesn't surprise me. I would say that I would probably have had a similar response, and the sort of expectation of what the profile is of those folks, often what they're being paid, the way that they're being, you know, sort of trained and treated or not treated as professionals is just so self-perpetuating, and I think you could say that about a lot of education, and in particular urban education. But I think ultimately we are still, to some degree, all of these things are a manifestation of sort of a very outdated mentality of sort of sticking those kids in a corner, literally. And so I'll get off my soapbox, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, I personally have a very similar feeling about that, you know, in terms of the human capital that we have, and the potential in you know, in para educators. You know, we have adults that are spending all day, every day with these students, whether it's a, you know, official one-to-one setting, or, you know, in self-contained or whatever. And, you know, the amount of knowledge that, at least in my experience, you know, I worked with paras throughout my 9 years, probably dozens and dozens of them. And the amount of knowledge that they carry about those students is profound. You know, whether or not their ability to, you know, contribute to that in, you know, the academic setting, or in, you know, grading or outcomes, I think is a huge missed opportunity. And actually the state of Washington just required more training for paraprofessionals. They're the first state ever to put in official requirements around specific training for paraeducators before they can be in, you know, in classrooms with students. So I can, and I'd be happy to share that article. I'm going to make a note of that for myself if anyone in the audience is interested in reading that article. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to quickly move on, but thank you. This has been great. So some other big takeaways from this report, you know, is like 40 pages long or something. But the big takeaways that my team and I took from this was that, you know, while most special ed teachers say that they use the IEP frequently, they do not have the resources, the time to meet with colleagues or plan lessons, or to work with other IEP members, which I think is exactly what, you know, our panelists just shared at the beginning in terms of, you know, they need time to plan, as Lily mentioned. I think we haven't really touched upon this idea of, you know, really meeting and collaborating with other colleagues, but we will get to that. And then obviously the resources, you know, the bite-sized pieces of information, practical strategies, things like that. We just touched upon the preparedness of the general ed colleagues and paraprofessionals. And then the last thing that was highlighted in this report was this idea of collaboration, and that increased collaboration improves outcomes. And so I wanted to divide this up into two pieces, because we see collaboration in, here at Education Modified in two ways. One is in specific programming, which includes co-teaching. So I want to talk about co-teaching for a minute. So the report highlighted that less than a third of special educators across the country, or those that responded to this report, less than a third of them were actually using a co-teaching model in their school, which is partnering with a general ed teacher in the same classroom. This is not the same as a pull out or push in approach, but actual co-teaching. And they highlighted in the report that they found this to be alarming, and that it raised a red flag for this population of students, as co-teaching is a well-established evidence-based practice that has significant evidence to improve outcomes for students. So quickly, from our panelists, in terms of your experience, what have you seen to be successful models for co-teaching, and do you have suggestions? And in reality, I mean, co-teaching is hard. It's extremely difficult to execute on it. It took me 9 years in one building to really establish a co-teaching program. So I'd love to hear from our panelists on your thoughts, your experience, what you found to be successful, or what you see the challenges to be.
Sure. I'll start. I find that one of the biggest mistakes we continue to make is we underestimate the power of the master schedule. Master scheduling is such a powerful tool, and I think it's really essential for the purposes of creating these collaborative environments that allow for effective co-teaching. To co-teach, it's really good to be able to co-plan. But if we're going to expect that of people, we need to create environments that facilitate that for them and don't make it more difficult for them to do their jobs along with the rest of their job. So, what I think I've found the most effective is that when people develop their master schedules, they develop them with a continuum of services in mind, including co-teaching, so that they are intentionally and proactively looking at developing co-teaching partnerships, so that people can really work together and truly co-teach, and not just push in and only do the one lead, one support model. So I think my biggest soapbox that I always get on is the master schedule. Be proactive in your master scheduling, and this can be done, and it can be done well.
And taking it a level underneath the master schedule, because I agree, the master schedule is the backbone, that starts everything. But then also ensuring that your co-teaching teams understand what a model they're going to use. Are they going to do one teach, one assist, parallel teaching, station teaching? I feel that we hear this term co-teaching a lot, and when I go and I do professional development, and I think I'm sure my colleagues as well, when they support schools and they ask them, okay, exactly how are you implementing co-teaching, they really can't they really can't explain, or I just walk around, or I help, or I do this. So I think that if the school adopts 2 or 3 of the models and uses them, the ones that most applicable, and uses them with fidelity, and there's a routine in place on how to co-teach, then little by little you can add the other different models, and then they could use it based on the needs of the student or of the classroom or of the content being taught.
Yes, I think it sounds like we're all in agreement. One of the things that has been successful in the evolution of our inclusion program, I think we've taken into consideration both of those things that my colleagues have mentioned. Master schedule is a big one. And yes, even making sure that there are structures in place that support co-teaching. I don't think that we have it figured out. I use evolution, purposefully. But I do think that we've gotten to a place where we have shared co-teaching, shared co-planning times among co-teachers. We've gotten to a place where we are using protocols, to establish co-teaching relationships. One of them is a marriage protocol. It sounds kind of funny, but it really just kind of gives an opportunity for co-teaching pairs to set ground rules and learn how each of them goes about their practice. And I think small pieces like that show your staff what you value, especially if you are operating through an inclusive model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I think, there are, I love this idea of, these like small little steps, establishing, protocol for co-teachers, having level-setted expectations, as well as this idea of adopting just like 2 to 3 co-teaching models. Like, I'm not going to throw 6 co-teaching models at you and expect that you master them all, right? But like, as a school, we're going to do these 2, and this is what you guys are going to work on while, we're developing our co-teaching practice, and we can then move on to incorporating other ones given the context of the content or a classroom or, what have you. I think that, the other thing about, co-teaching is that, it involves a lot of, again, moving parts. So this idea of the master schedule also is, I think, something that, people can really kind of take back home and think about. The other thing that we wanted to really point out is something that we've seen in the market in schools, really from a technology side, is interoperability. I don't think many people really think about interoperability as collaboration, but I can't imagine a world moving forward and where this is not the case. There's a couple things to think about when we're thinking about interoperability, whether it is single sign-on to full LMS App Center integration. My team and I know from our work in the technology space that this is where school is going. If your teachers aren't online now, which I'm sure that most of them are, they will be. And one of the biggest things that we hear from teachers and complaints is this like siloedness of these tools and systems that they're using to support different parts of their work. And so I just want to make sure that charter leaders are aware and have this on their radar. Interoperability improves productivity, allowing and thinking about systems to support your teachers. We really think about it as a workflow and collaboration. So as some of our panelists mentioned, and what was seen in the report is time. Teachers need time to communicate and collaborate. Well, and technology is the answer to that. It's not a panacea, but it is physically a workflow that allows teachers to more efficiently communicate, pass on information, and improves productivity. And especially if co-teaching is not a model that is fully implemented in your school, we believe that interoperability is one other way that you can really meet teachers where they are and help to give them their time back to improve that collaboration and communication. Is anyone here? I know that we have a couple of our panelists who specifically use Education Modified as an integrated product. Can you speak to some technology and this idea of interoperability, or any issues that you've seen with lots of different ed tech products in the market, things like that?
This is Wanda. I think one of the things that we grappled with was finding electronic ways for teachers to meet. Not everyone, even during a co-planning time, sometimes there's so many things that teachers have to talk about when it comes to meeting the needs of the learners in front of them, that often they run out of time, or maybe there are materials that they need to work on outside of that co-planning time. And so finding ways to communicate that's outside of email on living documents, I think that's a huge push from teachers. Anytime I was surveying our staff just about, what do you need in order for us to, improve this kind of partnership, meaning co-teaching, that was one of the things. We need, we need progress monitoring tools that we both have access to. They want it to, yes, be seamless, but they also want something that they can each have access to in their own spaces, but they can see collaborative input.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on this from any of the other panelists? One of the things that, we often hear, especially when we speak to, principals, is that it's like, well, we can't have one more thing, right? Like another technology, solution that only helps teachers do like one part of their job. Often we also hear of this idea of reinventing the wheel and having to, kind of start from scratch at the beginning of every year, where we believe, certain technology tools and this, particularly this interoperability of either, single sign-on or full LMS integration really helps that transfer, that knowledge transfer from year to year.
I think the only other thing I would add, I made a rule a few years ago: no more spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Just because, for so many of us, and I'm certainly guilty of this, it's sort of the first tool that you reach for, and it really, Excel has been contorted to do so many things that it was ultimately not designed to do in terms of knowledge capture, and it really isn't the best tool for that. But for so many years, it was the best tool for that. And so I think disciplining as sort of leaders and administrators, disciplining yourself to reach for the best tool, which might be a new one, I think is something that is sort of the obligation of a strong leader to do. And it will drive so much improvement down the road. It just, in the minute for that person. And again, I'm guilty of this. It's uncomfortable. But there are so many more better solutions that didn't exist many years ago. And it's hard, I think, sometimes for folks to even know what's out there and know what's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. I mean, so that's a great little segue into one of the things that we know that's possible is that specifically, for Google Drive, Google Drive can be a special ed teacher's best friend in many ways. And then it works until it doesn't. We know a lot of schools and districts are weary of Google, but with Google Classroom and with the suite of literal like productivity tools and solutions that they offer, this is where we really see schools going. And one of the things that is my soapbox is like giving teachers the tools that they need to actually do their jobs. We look at other professions, whether it's, salespeople who have extensive CRMs or accountants who have these like amazing accounting systems, we need to give special ed teachers tools to do their jobs as well. And I think that, Google has moved towards, again, it wasn't designed this way, just as Anna mentioned, but that's where it's going. And so one example that we like to share, and again, it can be done in a way that is extremely confidential, is Google Forms. And so we'll be sending a free resource to all of our attendees for a template that can be embedded into teachers' workflow to collect information. So we have some templates that teachers can use that you can share with them if you choose to do so. For the sake of time, I did want to go ahead and quickly show Education Modified and what our platform does, and then quickly talk about parents, and then leave the last 2 minutes for some questions. So this is what Education Modified looks like within Schoology. The reason why we brought up interoperability is because before we started this work, we really knew that we needed to be an integrated solution to meet teachers where they are when they're doing work in the gradebook or in the LMS. And so this is what our solution looks like in Schoology, which is a learning management system. So there are 3 parts of Education Modified, and As I mentioned at the beginning, our mission is to really bring special ed out of the compliance-only framework and really bring it back into the classroom as an instructional tool for teachers to use and be able to capture information, support each other, as well as communicate and collaborate, and then have the actual tools that they need to do their jobs. So the first part is the learning biography, and this is literally what every teacher needs to know to access information about a child's learning needs. So here they can access a snapshot that is a running live record, live document of the professional memory of teachers. So that includes everything from this nuanced information about a child's learning needs to, if they have a paraprofessional or strengths or interests, and this ability to support maybe the general ed teachers who don't have all this background knowledge, or that the 6th grade team can get the first day of school from the 5th grade team, or 6th grade team, whatever I said. The next is the actual learning needs. So to think about what we spoke about with preparing, general educators and para educators and other stakeholders is, giving teachers that access. We've heard a lot of IEPs at a glance that are often documents or auto-generated from IEP systems. We believe that teachers need more than that in a more comprehensive and interactive way. So we provide teachers with this job-embedded professional development that they can access at any time on all of the disability classifications. So that includes, the official diagnosis, as well as how that manifests in the classroom, and then any interactive resources that we curate for teachers at any time. The next part is the testing accommodations. And again, just so that it's quick, easy access, everyone knows where to find this information. And then last is an integrated document section. So teachers can upload any sort of documents. If they're using Google Drive or Dropbox, we have a OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox integration. So it's all seamless. We see everything from the IEPs themselves to graphic organizers, behavior plans, modified rubrics, things like that. We also have a real-time communication hub, which is the team board, which teachers can go back and forth with questions and answers and message threads that is always attached to the student. So when we're looking at Penelope here, we can see all of this information, and then we can also quickly collaborate in real time with our colleagues. The next section is our strategy section. And these are the strategies that have been tagged directly to the student that are organized by skill gaps. So teachers can easily go in and see, okay, Penelope has speaking and listening goals. What have we implemented for Penelope, and what has worked and what hasn't? And what are teachers saying about this? And then we also provide strategy toolkits. So every strategy that we recommend opens up into a toolkit that provides teachers everything that they need to actually implement the strategy with fidelity. So any sort of apps, downloads, printables, templates, as well as articles, and we always include the research in which we get it from. We have an entire database that teachers can go ahead and access again at any time. It's available for them as job embedded PD, so they can go in and hone in on a search. Everything is broken down into to sub-skill gaps, so teachers can really focus in on those behaviors that they're seeing, or those sub-skill gaps to be able to support them, browse any sort of strategies, any sort of tools and resources at any time within their day or within their workflow. And then lastly, we have a goals feature. So Education Modified is funded by the Institute for Education Sciences at the U.S. Department of Ed. And we built out this goal feature to support teachers in not only having instant access to goals that are being worked on, so that's IEP goals, language acquisition goals, but we also provide an entire library of data collection tools, as well as any sort of resources to support the collection of that data. So teachers can go ahead and make a copy of these, customize them, do whatever they want with them, but most importantly, they can attach these to the goal. So teachers can add the data collection tool, they can add a data point, they can type any sort of notes, and then they can also upload any sort of evidence or results for that data point. So classroom-based measurements, other assessments, student work, things like that. And then we go ahead and manipulate a graph in real time so teachers aren't having to do it in spreadsheets on their own. So I am going to just go back to the presentation really quickly. And I would love to hear specifically, you know, from Wanda or from Meagan, and how you've heard some of your schools are using Education Modified in specific settings.
This is Wanda. Melissa, you know that we have absolutely fallen in love with EdMod. We use the Learning Bios feature right within Jumprope, which was one of the platforms that you showcased before. I have to say, you know, initially we began using this in place of IEPs at a glance. So Jumprope is our gradebook system. So every teacher has access to that platform. And so I was intrigued in knowing that there was a product that would work well within something we already had access to. So that idea of please not another thing definitely resonated very much with me. And so the special education team, actually our inclusion team in general, thinking about special populations, really began to dive into the strategies pieces that are really built out. I don't recall you saying this, Melissa, but one of the things we appreciate very much is that all of these are, yes, research strategies. So when we have kid talks through consultation with teaching teams, when teachers are struggling with figuring out an effective strategy to implement with a student, we found this search box to be quite robust. And anytime we are asking EdMod if there's a glitch that we've discovered, and there really have not been many, you know, it's typically addressed within a week, I want to say. You know, if there are things that we were searching for that we could not find, again, that is rare, but I have to say that the EdMod team jumped right on it. Initially, the English learner strategies were not as robust as the special education.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when my team brought that to EdMod's attention, just because we also have a large population of English learners, the team got right on it, and I'm just thrilled to see so many of the, if you want to call them concerns, I think we were just kind of critiquing the platform. We didn't really expect for things to be addressed. We were happy with what we were seeing, and the next time we logged on, you would see progress monitoring opportunities. And so now we can have more of a whole student approach, just with many more voices at the table. And I think it makes it a lot easier for the special education team to monitor progress and to develop goals that are appropriate. Because there's a lot of, we hope that there will be a lot more general education input using this platform. That was a lot, but obviously we love this product.
All right, so I'll go ahead. I, you know, am not one who is personally using Education Modified, but however, our story, we were really working with 4 schools these past 2 years on improving their continuum of special ed services. And you know what we discovered a lot of times when we do our needs assessment again is that disconnect between general education and special education knowledge on all levels. So one of our schools, in sort of, fine tuning their continuum, really wanted to try out Ed Modified. So we purchased it. And, that school just was really thrilled at how Ed Modified just really brought everything into one place to make that shared accountability a little bit easier. So it's sort of, I think what they've enjoyed is that Ed Modified seems to have created sort of a no excuses kind of situation and platform, because everybody having access to that and that ability to share that knowledge about all children has just made service provision a lot easier.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I'm going to take a question from the audience really quickly. And does our program integrate with ECATS or an IEP system in North Carolina? So Education Modified does not integrate with any IEP systems. And that has been a very conscious choice for us. As of right now, we are working to figure out what is the best path forward, if there is one. Often IEP systems are built on legacy technology, and they're often IT solutions that don't have like open integration capabilities. And so we have not chosen to integrate with the IEP systems. However, we do offer services that are free as part of our subscription model to import that data and help you to update that data in Education Modified. And then you can print out reports from Education Modified to then attach back into IEP systems. And so that's kind of where we are with that. It is a very a sticky problem in that it's more of a cultural change around IEPs. The state of Massachusetts actually just released a report that they would not be building their own IEP system because they realized after a year, almost 2 years of doing research, that it would be silly, I can't remember the exact word that they used, but silly to believe that an IT solution would actually improve IEP practices, and that they really had to rethink that whole thing. And so, yeah, so right now we don't, but we do offer services for free as part to get that data in there and then get that data back out. So we've actually run out of time. I did want to talk about parents quickly. There's a couple things that we have talked about here at Education Modified that I also know our charter school leaders and our expert panelists here have. The idea that parents choose charter schools for a very specific reason, and that they often look to charter schools for expertise. And that is very much the same in special education, that they're looking for expertise. They're also looking for empathy, and they're also looking for transparency. And I will send this deck to everyone, but I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I really appreciate, all the panelists. This has been extremely insightful. As for some next steps from our audience, anyone who's interested, we are offering a special pilot program for charter schools. As I mentioned, we do partner with the Institute for Education Sciences, and so we do have special pricing for research partnerships, as well as stipends that are available for teachers. We have about 20, might be a little less than that, slots available now, but if you'd like more information as a next step, you can type your email into the chat window right now. Or you can email us at info@educationmodified.com if you would like to, if any of this resonated with you, if you want to forward this to your administration. Those are 2 ways in which you can contact us. And then we will also be following up with some free resources. So we will include our IDEA Interactive Disability Bundle for all of our participants and all of those who registered. And then we will also share some templates in Google Forms that you can pass along to your teachers. And then I'll see if I can find, we'll include the full CEC report in all your spare time, those of you who want to read the full report. But thank you so much to our panelists. I really appreciate you joining and sharing your experience and your expertise. I hope that this was useful and productive for everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day, and we will share the recording with everyone as well when we get it offline. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Thank you so much.